During this time, I became friendly with Mr. Taddy, Bonnie Livingston's father, and he got me a job at a bar working during the days. So now young Nesta and Sadella are in the town. Country has come to town. They're staying with relatives. She's trying to get every job that she possibly can. Not much is working out. She says the months ran by. The times were tough as a rock stone. But every now and again, a blessing would fall from heaven. Like the time I got off the bus and was walking to the house, I would clean the day only to glimpse a 5-shilling note crumpled up and laying on the dirty roadside. My heart pounded fast. I glanced at it and looked quickly around to see if anyone was watching. Anybody see me? How for money days? I could spot no one, for it was still very early morning. But just to be sure, I continued on my way and then stopped, like I had just remembered something important. I scratched my head, muttering to myself, where did you put that thing there? Turned and retraced my steps like a woman with plenty on her mind who was confused. City interested in her. Carefully, I stepped past the 5-shilling note while I pretended to be lost in thought, for I wanted to make sure no one would see me bend down to pick up the money. After I was sure there was no one was anywhere near, I again headed towards the 5-shilling note, bent down quickly and scooped it up with a prayer of thank you, Jay. That money bought Nesta food for a whole week, rice and yam, and I gave to Pat to cook for his school day lunch. So we're going to continue and jump down a little bit. Nesta catching a fight. I kind of sitting there going with little schoolboy. But we won't forget to when she meet Mr. Taddy. Okay? We battered from pillar to post, moving often during those lean cow years. You know how families say, yeah, man, you can't come, and 2 weeks later, them say, no, man, you have to go come out. Yeah, take up too much light. It's like, because how y'all moving that often? And Ivy said, come on in, right? It says, we battered from pillar to post, moving often during those lean years, always looking for a cheaper house or a more convenient place to live. One time we shared a dwelling with Gibson and Pat. Another time, Nesta and I stayed in a rented room on Regent Street. During this time, I became friendly with Mr. Taddy, Bonnie Livingston's father, and he got me a job at a bar working during the days, paying £2 a week. But things between me and Mr. Taddy never ran smoothly. He was a very jealous man, even though he was married, and kept at least 3 other women on the side in addition to me. So a lot of people are saying this is a Caribbean man thing. But Nesta, you have to also consider that this young boy left from his grandfather in the country seeing this. He come now and he is with Mr. Taddy, somebody later he considers like a stepfather. And he's seeing his mother bata-bata-ing, struggling to try to make ends meet, right? It says here, Nesta was not a burden during those troublesome years. I seldom got any complaints about his behavior and rarely had to give him a beating. Kind of big for beating, ain't it? One time, the headmistress at the model school sent for me. When I went to the school, I found that she had locked Nesta in a back room all day because he'd flown into a rage and gotten into a fight with another boy. Temper. He was outrageous, the headmistress complained. I couldn't control him. That's why I had to lock him up. He was just outrageous. You mean the other side of tough gang? It says, my son was outrageous. Parents always never know that it's my child, my angel, never. It could never be my child. It must be that other child because my child is simply marvelous. Parents, stop capping. My son was outrageous, I asked, hardly believing my ears. He was uncontrollable, she fumed. Nesta said afterwards that the boy had started to fight him and he was only defending himself. So I put the incident down as schoolboy scuffle and didn't fret over it. City had some things pan up for your mind. The only time I ever beat Nesta during these hard years was one evening when I brought him a pair of brand new Bata shoes and he immediately wore them outside to kick the football and came back in with the soles knocked off. On top of everything else, he'd come home late too without telling me where he was going. A man a man, mommy, you know see man outside a play football, you can talk about when me a go. Man a man. Nesta. When I saw how he ruined the brand new pair of shoes that I had worked so hard to buy, I flew into a temper and gave him a good strapping. He howled for his uncle, Uncle Gibson, Uncle Gibson. Gibson came running into the room begging, all right, Siddy, all right, no lick him no more, no lick him no more. With disgust, I threw down the strap. Listen me now. I warned Nesta, don't go nowhere tomorrow morning, you hear me? Nowhere. See the shoes there, you knock off the bottom just as me bite. The bunner, you know much flour she have to scrub, you know much cook she have to cook, you know much walk she have to walk, you just kick off the bottom of the shoes one time, Nesta. Come on now, man. The next morning, I left early and went to work. When I came back the evening, Nesta had cleaned up a storage room and that had been a total mess. He had shined up the kitchen. Pat greeted me at the door, remarked in a whisper, oh, Miss Siddy, it looked like the whipping last night was very good for Nesta. I can't with people, sir. In clean up everything, lock, stock, and barrel. I have not heard that term in a long time. Lock, stock, and barrel. I could hardly believe my eyes at how he had transformed the house. From head to toe, everything was spick and span. And those two words together. Nesta, I called. He came running out the room. Yes, mama. That beatness, straighten him up, straighten him up. What you do? He smiled, shuffling nervously, looking pleased with himself. I just clean up a little, mama. He never want no more lick. A little? You clean up everything. The whole place look clean as a feather. Everything look good. I sorry I mash up these shoes, mama, he said, looking hand, dog, and repentant. I gave him a hug and we made up. And that was the last time I had occasion to beat Nesta. But he was growing big now, nearly 13, and gained a sense of responsibility. All right, we're going to jump down. All right. After battling around from this dwelling to that one, we finally ended up in a government house in Trenchtown. In a government yard in Trenchtown that had been occupied as new by my brother Solomon and his wife Ruth. But they were getting a divorce. Ruth was moving to England, where my brother was also going to join his new woman. Solomon contacted me and advised me that if I moved in on top of him the very night before he was due to leave, the house would automatically become mine. But he warned me that Ruth was there too, and also planned to capture the house and turn it over to one of her sisters, who was a teacher. With these government houses, possession was truly 9/10 of the law. So I did as he suggested, facing a scowling Ruth, who had hoped to hand off the house to her sister. In fact, Ruth was so vexed by my moving in that she called her 3 sons into the drawing room and bitterly announced to them, I want you to remember what your father and your auntie do for the rest of your life. Dang, Ruth, you going to hold a grudge over a government house for the rest of your life? The boys, who were then very young, just looked from one adult to another, bewildered, like, what kind of thing this? The next day, Ruth and her furniture were gone, and Nesta and I were in possession of a nearly brand new concrete house, compliments of the government, at 19 2nd Street in Trenchtown. It was the same house that he would later sing about in No Woman, No Cry. So it's interesting because Rita, I haven't cross-referenced in a while, because Rita is saying that the house that he sung about in Trenchtown was her Auntie Vi's house in a government yard in Trenchtown. But his mother is saying that the government yard in Trenchtown was her yard. Everybody I make claim, I remember when we used to sit in a government yard in Trenchtown. I don't know how a yard, but I did somebody yard. Yet it seemed as soon as one trouble ended, another began. So finally them settle down and they have a place to live. But trouble never set like rain. Mr. Taddy and I were not living smoothly. So by this time, she's a widow. Okay, Carnaval, him sail out. There was always fussing and fighting. He was a violent man with a wicked temper and mad jealousy. Sometimes he didn't like the way I talked. Sometimes he didn't like the way I was dressed and would just come up to me and rip off my frock and say, you're not going anywhere. One time, he came into the bar and seen me having a harmless drink with a gentleman patron named Mr. Williams. The memory sharpie, when I lie, she coming like when me talk to my granny, the memory sharpie, 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 sharp. She remember everybody name. Mr. Taddy quickly strolled over to where I was sitting and boxed the glass of beer out of my hand. Did I show that today I sit down and I fall it and I gallivant with man? When I retreated into the kitchen, he followed behind me and tried to push me down against a hot stove. Mr. Taddy, hey, I've said it. That was only one of many fights we had, for he was a very cruel and wicked person who always had to domineer. One time, for example, as a matter of fact, hold on, we could go to this commercial break and find out what Mr. Taddy did do one time. Island Twist follows Jackie Brown, a young girl who finds herself head over heels for the new island boy at school in fresh outer yard, and Jackie has the fever. But as she navigates the ups and downs of her new crush, things quickly spiral out of control when her not so secret admirer becomes determined to sabotage her relationship. So check out the new novel Island Twist over on Amazon today. Now back to the story. So one time, for example, during a fight, he cut me in the hand with a knife. This is more than what kind of relationship this? Blood dripping from the wound, I fled to Denham Town Police Station to file a complaint against him. Seeing me do this, Mr. Taddy took the same knife and sliced open his fleshly palm. Not only is he violent, something else may be going on with Mr. Taddy. What in all of thin line between love and hate when she beat herself up? Lynn Whitfield. Y'all remember that movie? When Lynn Whitfield beat herself with the orange them and claim said Martin did beat her? What in all of thin line is going on? Like I say, Then he burst into the station, bleeding badly, ran up to the sergeant who was behind the counter, taking down my statement. So yes, Mr. Sergeant, this is what did happen. So the man bust in and said, no, sir, me I bleed too. And boss, Sergeant, look how this woman cut me. But why file a complaint? Up to then, the sergeant had been sympathetic to my injury and had intended to send a constable to arrest Mr. Taddy. But when he saw Mr. Taddy also bleeding before him, he assumed that we'd wounded one another in a bloody domestic fight. Angrily, he told us to both get out of his station and to go to the hospital. And it was all because of his mad jealousy that Mr. Taddy behaved so wickedly. I have noticed that when men are married, they're usually more jealous of the mistress they have on the other outside than they are of the wife who's patiently sitting at home waiting for them. It's an interesting observation, Siddy, because Siddy was first young girl, turned wife, who was abandoned, turned widow, now she turned mistress. She says, that was the case with Mr. Taddy. He was possessive and jealous. About the third time she said it, so it's safe to assume that he was possessive and jealous, according to the account. And we were constantly fighting because of it. He kept a close watch over me and was very domineering. Everything he said sitting never right with Mr. Taddy, sitting never right. Unfortunately, sometimes Nesta would be caught in the middle of our fights. Where did Nesta? Later on in Rita's book, she talks about fights in front of children, hitting one another, behaving in a very immature manner. He witnessed this stuff. So all of this is before he's 14. 0 to 7, 7 to 14. It goes into the core of the human being. It imprints us in our very foundation, our root system, as well as our emotional center that's being developed. So all throughout from 0 to 7, 7 to 14, all of his system is being imprinted on a very deep soul level, okay? And he went from seeing his grandfather's behavior to his absentee father, and now Mr. Taddy being a very terrible example, according to the narrative. It says here, unfortunately, sometimes Nesta would be caught in the middle of our fights. One Friday evening, we had the worst fight of all, and Nesta got involved. Mr. Taddy was sitting on the veranda of our house discussing the Bible. When she said our house, so me thinks that Mr. Taddy I come around and then, yeah, I know, because them in a government yard in Trenchtown. So that would mean he's coming over now. Mr. Taddy was sitting on the veranda of our house discussing the Bible with one of his cousins from St. Mary. This was a thing Mr. Taddy very much loved to do. And it's interesting. This is why sometimes people get turned off from biblical narratives or the Bible, because the people who are holding it and using it as weapons oftentimes have the most questionable characters, right? And so people who are well-meaning are like, well, if you're holding on to that, I question it. And we shouldn't make people turn us off from seeking what is true and right? But let's continue. So no, Mr. Taddy, who's possessive, jealous, and a game wife born multiple times, he might argue over the Bible. It says, so he loved to do this. Sit and read the Bible and dispute about the meaning of its passages. He was proto-Rasta, before Rasta, proto-Rasta. And he was in the middle of doing this when his brother Fitzy walked up and handed him a letter. Mr. Taddy glanced at it briefly, kissed his teeth in contempt, tore up the letter and tossed it over the veranda wall. Then he returned to his biblical disputing. So let me get a letter so I can see. So Mr. Taddy, yeah, me I tell you, I know that it say man. Come see the letter there. What this? Fling this over veranda wall. That did happen. Okay. So it says, I was sitting inside when this happened, and I saw the whole thing and wondered what the letter had said and who had written it. Something warned me to leave it alone. So we never follow. He said, something tell me to leave it, See, you know, me nah bother listen to you. Make me go pick up a letter. Make me go see the outside now. I wonder where I go in peace. That letter you together and go mind Taddy business. Something warned me to leave it alone, but the devil whispered in our ear. And when the men were deep into their discussion about scripture, no man, me I tell you, say Abraham thing did blue, man, it never green. They was arguing. I sneaked around the front of the house, pick up the pieces of letter, and returned to my bedroom, carefully putting them together on my bed. See, they never done that bad. See, they say, what did it say? Come to me house at night. What the letter say? See, they never have a thing I do. It was from one of Mr. Taddy baby mother, a woman named Cecil. What is this? Ceciline, grumbling that he had left her alone to come and be with me, him dirty sweetheart. Ceciline, right? Ceciline, yo, what kind of mix-up? And threatened that whenever she met me on the street, it would be worse than war. Everywhere is war. Dun, 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 dun. War. And that, so the matey thing, now it a go on. So she said it would be worse than the war that had recently broken out in Warcarrier Hills between the Rasta and the English army. When I read that letter, something just got up inside of me. I remember say early on, Sidella said she love fighting. So she jump up and thump her brother, So I know she get in and she shook down Captain when Captain did a go and like send it one get shook down, right? She says, when I read the letter, something just got up inside me, and I went out on the veranda, meaning to confront Mr. Taddy, but a voice warned me not to say anything, so I retreated into the house and held my tongue. But then the devil whispered louder in my ear, and I abruptly threw caution to the wind, stepped out on the veranda and clutched the patch up letter. She should have did wait. She should have did wait, man. Because knowing out there, now you're going to make him look away in front of the man, and you know saying head no good. So she should have did wait, but she didn't wait because she said the devil did give her a little one whisper. I called him, come here, Mr. Taddy. And he followed me aside. Or at least she pulled him one side. What kind of letter is this? So she are here with the patchy letter. What is, Mr. Taddy? What is? And yo, Sadella does not disappoint in this book, son. She does not. She is a spirited woman. I says, anywhere I see this dirty girl, I go and bust her backside. She don't say backside, but for purposes of, you understand? And if you bust her backside, I bust you. He snarled. He picked up a stool and lifted it up as if he would hit me. Grabbing a thick glass tumbler that was sitting on a nearby table, I smashed it hard against his ear. Radap! The glass shattered. Blood exploded from the side of his head. Dang, Sadella. He didn't hit you. Sadella's like, she gonna hit first. It says, when I saw the thick gobs of blood gushing, I was frightened and my knees got weak and I ran out the yard. He grabbed me, spun me around and pumped me in the eye, dropping me onto the ground and planting his foot atop my chest. Took out a knife from his pocket and started to open it with his teeth. Man, ready for deal with her. Whoa, Mr. Taddy, slow down. Slow down, girl. Y'all doing the most over a letter? I thought the mateys were supposed to be fighting, not you and her. Just then, a burly barmaid from across the street had seen the fight burst into the yard and pin his arms from behind. Taddy, she screamed, leave the woman, leave the woman. Run, Miss Marley, she yelled to me. At the time, Miss Marley, a cross between Marley and Malcolm, was the nickname that everyone called me. Without shoes upon my foot, I tore out the yard, dashed across the street into the house owned by a woman named Miss Tilly. Peeping through the window, I watched the commotion across the street, staying carefully out of sight, for I knew that Mr. Taddy's blood was so hot that in his present mood, he could easily commit the M. I saw him go to the cistern in the yard and wash the blood off his face. Realizing that I wasn't safe where I was, I waited until no one was looking. Then I darted into the street and ran away from the neighbor into the yard of an old lady everyone knew as Mammy. Fitzy, Mr. Taddy's brother, lived in this same yard. When I burst into her house and blurted into an astonished Mammy that what happened, she lifted her arms and cried, Lord Gigi, you draw blood. My knees were trembling. Yes, Mammy. Boy, Mammy said, me have to go down there and see what happened, Mammy. Halfly concerned, halfly nosy. Okay, because what Mammy was about to do. Yes, Mammy, I beg her. Go down and see what happened for maybe then go and call the police. Y'all were doing too much. It says here, warning me to stay out of sight, she went out, carefully closing the front door behind her, leaving me cowering in her drawing room. She was gone from what seemed like forever. When she returned, her face was hardened. Molly, she said in a shaking voice, you cut him bad, you know. What? I cried. It bad, lady, you said you took a tumbler and smashed it across his face. I mean, yes, Molly, and them have to carry him go hospital. Then it's bad. You know Jamaicans, one bad, not too bad. Bad, it kind of bad. But bad, it really bad. A three bad that. I asked, my voice trembling. Then it bad. Yes, Mrs. I really bad. No, sorry. Yes, Mrs. It really bad for true. It bad. Yes, Mrs. It really bad for true. I know you're afraid. When the devil did that whisper in your ears, feel licky man in your head side, you're never afraid. While we were talking in whispers, While we were talking in whispers, Fitzy, Mr. Taddy's brother, came into the yard, for he lived in one of the rooms, and he stepped onto the veranda, bawled to Mammy, Man, if you ever see what happened to Taddy, but him deserve what him get. For him have all of the whole heap of gal them. So enough gal him having a 3 gal that. The gal them fool around with him and having wife. No wonder all of them something happened to him. Big married man have all of them little old gal all over the place. So the same person who was sitting there arguing Bible with him comes to someone else, not knowing that city is there, talking smack. I stepped from inside the room. Who you talking about? I asked. So she still got a whole chest. You know what I mean? Fritz was so frightened to see me that his jaw nearly locked. Miss Marley. Miss Marley, he stammered apologetically. May I tell you the truth? Me no see where him do you, but me see where you do him. But every story have 2 sides. Him cut bad, I asked. Yes, him cut bad. Then gone with him to the hospital. Everything clear up down there now? Yes, Miss Marley. Fritz straighten up. Later, I learned that Nesta had come home to find Mr. Taddy bleeding from his head side, wounded, and the whole yard in a noisy uproar. Can you imagine? It's not a nice thing to live in a violent environment as a child. It's unsettling, okay? Mr. Taddy sent Nesta upstairs to get his wife. So Miss Maggie was there all this time? Miss Maggie, who came down to the house to find him moaning in pain and bleeding badly. Howling with rage, Mr. Taddy screamed at his wife, "Look what this dirty girl do to me, Maggie." So you wanted Maggie's sympathy, bro? Okay. So now Steady is a dirty girl. So we're short with them now. Look, he says, "Look what this dirty girl do me, Maggie. Look how she cut me. What me fi do? You think we should have to go call the police, make them arrest her? For what? For put your name in the paper?" Because remember, how is Amuna doing a lot of this research outside of the paperwork? Everything in the paper. That's why she's saying, figure scandal everybody and put your name in the paper. Like how Naval did in the paper, big and bright for bigamy. She said, for what? For put your name in the paper? Miss Maggie snap. The best thing you can do to that nasty girl is leave her. You better go to hospital before you bleed to death. That night, after everything had quieted down, I reached home and found the door to my house wide open. Inside, every piece of furniture was smashed to pieces. My cabinet, my center table, anything with glass in it lay just shattered and strewn across the floor. "What happened?" I asked a woman who was sitting in the yard, catching a peaceful late night smoke. "Miss Maggie, mush up your house," she said, shrugging. Nestor, who was about 15 years old at the time, was very angry and upset when he saw me with a black eye. "When I grow big, mama, and become a man," he vowed, touching my bruised eye, "I go and lick that man back in the eye. You wait and see." "No," I said wearily, "you don't have to do that. You'll just bring more trouble." And Nestor never did. So we are going to pick up from there, because this tumultuous experience of Sidela and Taddy is, like I said, is being witnessed not only by the neighborhood, but also by the community and Nestor. So with that said, wait, let me put in that little part here. A child grows up, takes on his own responsibilities in life, and with the eyes of a man sees childhood episodes differently. In later life, Nestor himself would occasionally have to slap up his own woman when her mouth got too enough. So Sidela, who was abused, let's make no mistakes about it, and also abused others, is now justifying, and this is oftentimes what we, the people, do as we grow, is we don't know how to deal with or sort out these experiences, and so we justify them. In this case, she's justifying that Nestor saw violence, and she puts later on in his life, he have to slap. Did he have to? So this is the cyclical nature of this particular abuse. She goes on to say, so after that, I never heard him talk again about getting revenge against Mr. Taddy. Even though blood had flowed in the latest fight, Mr. Taddy and I soon made up, very toxic, and continued our relationship. So after he bust his head with the tumbler, after he was bleeding out, after Maggie mash up your thing, yeah, continued. It says eventually he even replaced the furniture his wife had mashed up. So we continued uneasily, fretfully, never smoothly. Again, so this is modeling the type of relationship that you should accept, as well as that your son should model later on. And so again, like I said, all of these things, and this goes for us as well, whatever we're witnessing in our formative years, as we're growing, whatever we're being exposed to from adults in our lives, it sets the mold. It is either we want to replicate that intentionally or subconsciously, or we don't want to replicate it and we try to move away far from it. But if we don't deal with these things that we have witnessed, if we're not honest about them, when we have our children or the opportunity to impress upon other people that's coming behind us, we may inadvertently pass these negative things down to them because we have not had opportunities to unpack these situations and get to the root of it. So the value for me of this conversation is looking at how progressively she began to accept these things, and it was for monetary reasons, right? Mr. Toddy gave her a job. She's now a widow. She was an orphan by her mother early. Her father was engaged with all of these other activities, and as a woman, she's trying to find her place in the world. And in this particular case, she's willing to accept being a Métis in this very tumultuous situation, because at this point, what else can she do, right? So with that said, join us next time as we continue to have this conversation.